Well, now all the signs point to us getting to talk about signs themselves. Jeff Schmidt joins us. And Jeff, before we get into, I know billboards have been a big discussion in the city, but let's start with the basics of signs in general.
Right.
What are the rules, regulations? What do we need to know about signage?
Sure. Signage is very confusing, and everybody wants to talk about it, so that's why it's good to have this today. Signs that we've talked about in the past, you should really have more signage at a commercial district than in a single family district. I mean, people understand that. Then when you start looking at how much signage should be at a commercial district, how we've always regulated it is depending upon the size, you get more signage. So for a large store, based upon that size, you get more signage than on a really tiny small one. And people seem to understand that and go, yeah, why would you have a great big sign on a really tiny parcel on a really tiny size building? So those are the two parameters where we start with, is commercial gets more than the smaller land uses, and larger places get more signage than the smaller ones. But then where it gets confusing, okay, and again, if you're not confused already, is you can have a freestanding sign, which is those pole signs. You can have a wall sign, and people put that on the front of their building. Then you have window signs, you have banners, you have those portable temporary signs. You can have a billboard or an off-premise sign. Then you can have a roof sign, you can have a pennant sign. All those things just keep adding up, and pretty soon some businesses just have really overdone it.
So all those different types of signs, and I know about a year or two ago there were some changes to that too, with just having permits and that sort of thing.
Correct.
Too.
Yep. With the window signs is one of the things that we really started with, is window signs, those ones that are kind of painted on or put on the windows, those were never permitted, and again, permitted is how you get approval for put them on. So what we've said now is you have to come and ask us to put, and then once they're on, they're changeable. They can take down and say, today's French fries, tomorrow's a burger, tomorrow's a shake. They can change it out as much as they want, but at least you have to ask us to do it once. And so then we know they're there and what size they are. So we've permitted those. Same thing with the argument about a year ago is, can people put signs in their front yard? It's a First Amendment right to be able to put something on there. So we're like, that's fine, but there's a time period and a size, but we're not going to dictate what you put on there. I love my husband, or go Billy. We're not going to dictate that, but there's a size and how long they can be there. So all those different types of things go into the sign code.
And then how does the sign code, how is that influenced by shaped places?
Yes. How it's impacted by shaped places is, again, the whole history was always by districts. And so we always talked about those districts. And you had a commercial district, office district, and it was, we all know, it was antiquated. And so we had these older commercial districts and new commercial districts. But there was really no clarification. What do you mean an old district and a new district? Shape Sioux Falls, basically, and Shape Places said, why don't we create them all the same? And so what the people, again, that followed the election understand, if you have a really big commercial district, we called it C4, the smaller one is C3, the smaller one is C2, and the really small commercial district C1, up to 7,000. The next one was 25,000, 75,000. So we did it by size. So again, that worked perfectly with signage, because as we already talked, the larger your size of the store, if you're up to 75,000, you should get a bigger sign than someone that only has a 7,000 square foot. So we didn't really say what type of sign you got, but how much signage you have.
What about folks that go, man, but it just seems like I'm seeing these billboards everywhere.
Right.
What's the case with, are we seeing more, or how does that playing out?
Correct. With the billboards are a type of off-premise sign, because again, if you have it on your site, that's an on-premise, but if you're going to advertise something but it's not on your site, it's off-premise. So most often people think of billboards because they're on the interstate and you can go, oh, gas ahead. That's what they wanted to see. You can have those billboards off your site on a commercial district, and we didn't necessarily say whether it had to be in a C1 or a C4 district. We just said commercial districts should be allowed to have billboards. And if you drive along West 12th Street or South Minnesota right now, it's not always the large stores that have them. It's these small little parcels that go, I'm going to make money on this. I'm going to lease this because I have a little piece of ground that I can't really get a store on, but I can put a pole there and put a big sign on. So typically they lease out their site and they put a billboard on. Well, now what's evolved is that in all these commercial districts, they've been able to go, well, maybe there's new locations that I want to put a sign. The requirements are they can't be within 600 feet of each other. So a lot of the old districts in town, on old parts of town, they already had signs, but there's new commercial areas in Sioux Falls that didn't have off-premise signs. And so they may want to go out there and start leasing land in commercial districts, not in residential. You can't have billboards in residential districts and parks. You can't have them in office districts, but off-premise billboards could go in commercial districts as long as they're not within 600 feet of another off-premise sign.
So I think it's really important to reinforce there. We're not going to be driving down Phillips Avenue and see billboards popping up.
That's correct. Yeah, because on that Phillips Avenue, that's the boulevard, and there's single-family houses there, so that's not where they're going to go. But in a commercial district, Minnesota Avenue, you see those billboards all the way now, but south of 57th Street, you haven't seen them. But 69th in Minnesota is a commercial district, and so they may want to put up a off-premise sign.
And Jeff, would you say a lot of this is just part of a growing city?
It really is. It's a growing city. It's a dynamic state, and we have a lot of off-premise signs. I mean, the state has really struggled with this, or maybe not even struggled with it, but talked about it. In Rapid City and Brookings and Watertown, these communities really look at what they should do to advertise for tourism, for announcements. I mean, the public, look at what's on there right now. It's not just advertising for fast food restaurants. It's a lot of advertising about events. And we do that a lot in this tourism state.
And let's put in a reminder, because we are in political campaign election season.
Yes. Yeah.
What can we do? What can't we do
Sure.
when it comes to political signs?
We still totally respect people's rights to have First Amendment rights. So in political season, you can put up your signs before the election, but you have to have the signs down right immediately after. And again, they can be on your property, but you can't put them on the boulevard. So we've always tried to restrict that. That's the public right-of-way. And then there's a size standard that basically says what the size of the signs can be. And that's the typical signs that are out there. They're not making these irregular size signs, but put them out the 7 days before, the day after, and so.
And if I have questions, if someone says, can't I on any of the sign stuff, or do I need a permit, what do they do?
They call our office at 367-8888, or please just go to the website at siouxfalls.org. Signage is confusing. That's why we tried to get on Channel 16 today in CityLink. But go to the siouxfalls.org and look under the signage issues.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
Thank
and
you.
Of course, like Jeff said, complicated issue, but very important as Sioux Falls continues to grow.